Politics, as you know, is quite often quite negative, and thus I like to throw in a little optimism here and there because I am a pretty optimistic person, and that applies to this upcoming election. While nothing's a given and it's going to be a rather stressful next few months, I do think ultimately democracy will prevail and Donald Trump will lose. And with that being said, we talk a lot about the threat to democracy from Donald Trump and how I think as more people understand that, they'll reject him and his extremism. I do think just generally Americans are fed up with MAGA and other issues as well. But one of the subjects that we return to often, because I think it'll become central to this election, is reproductive freedoms. And how, even though it's true that Joe Biden is struggling in his approval rating and the polls are way too close for comfort. Sometimes Trump is ahead, sometimes Biden is ahead in these polls, and I'm hoping that will change over the course of the next few months, but that is where things stand now. There's a variable in this election that I think it's hard to quantify until election day. And the election days that have happened in the last few years, the midterm special elections in 2023, ballot initiatives, have given us some indication that Democrats may have a pretty dang good shot of overperforming the polls come November, in large part because of reproductive rights. And Jessica Tarlov yesterday on The Five discussed this a little bit. And I want to play you a clip from that. And it's interesting. I think it's a nightmare scenario, just to be clear, which is why we should be talking about it and because it's just important. It is a nightmare scenario for Donald Trump. The idea of reproductive rights becoming the center point of this election. Of course, the conversation of democracy has to be at the core, but we can walk and chew gum at the same time. And if reproductive rights are at the center of it too, he's going down. He's losing for sure. And so here on Fox, they're having to air Jessica Tarlov's telling of Trump's nightmare scenario. Here, take a look.
Thank you. Thank you.
No, I was kidding.
I was going to go to you, but
I'll go last.
Jesse, I would love to hear a long monologue in which you
And actually, before Jessica Tarlov talks, we'll let Jesse Waters talk.
Incorporate the same themes you had in the A block.
My father sent me this funny video for old people about abortion.
Yes.
A lot of men and a lot of women in the media and in the elite circles don't talk to young single women that much in their 20s. And when we do talk to young single women, we're definitely not asking them about their feelings about abortion. So I have no idea what the electorate is going to do about abortion. Mm-hmm. It's so impenetrable to me. It's not something that comes up.
I think we have an idea of what they're going to do. We'll get to that.
Up in conversation. So we could just be completely blindsided by this issue because it's very thorny to talk about. And there may be, and even married women in their 30s, that it's still an option on the table for them. And they don't talk about it to anybody, but when they go vote, they might vote just on that single issue. So my answer is, I have no idea.
It's a good answer. You know, Jesse, that's probably the best
honest.
answer
You should lead with that more often.
That's the best answer.
That was honest.
Last word, Jessica.
And before she jumps into that, the hesitance from Jesse Waters to speak very aggressively in the conservative direction on this issue right there, as you saw, as he's sort of like, I don't know, people might side against Republicans on this. And we're seeing this across the board in right-wing media, among Republican politicians. And while still they're pushing forward these horrible policies, there's at least the acknowledgement that what they're doing is very unpopular. And hopefully that eventually leads to them stopping doing these horrible policies. But in the meantime, let's just elect them out of office.
And that's good.
Fully agree with Jesse on the he has no idea, and also what Dana and the judge were saying about this. I would say, though, that it's not as if Democrats need to make up the evidence for this one. Donald Trump said, I killed Roe v. Wade. That is his legacy. And for the religious right, for instance, who it is a pure and simple morality issue, that makes him a hero. Mm-hmm. For Nikki Haley's supporters, that makes him difficult to stomach in a lot of ways, because we are seeing these 6-week abortion bans, like what's going to show up in Florida. And most people who have spoken to a woman know that you don't even get a heartbeat scan before 6 weeks. There's also a tremendous misconception about who is getting abortions. And Jesse demonstrates that quite beautifully, the misconception, because he said we're not talking to young single women. But that's not who's getting the majority of abortions. Over 60% of women in America who are seeking one have already given birth to a child before. That's part of family planning.
I said married in their 30s, Jessica.
No, you didn't. You said young.
Yeah, he said
in the 20s.
I added.
No,
I added.
Oh,
that.
added. Sorry. Oh, okay.
You lost track when I started telling the truth.
So it is.
Okay. Please make sure before going further that you're subscribed to this channel. Makes a huge difference. Click that subscribe button. Rapid growth going on. I'm grateful to all of you for that. But to respond to that moment, of course, she referenced, and it's important to emphasize this, that the Florida Supreme Court has now allowed for a 15-week abortion ban in Florida. But because of that and a subsequent law, it's going to turn into a 6-week abortion ban in the state of Florida, which is pretty frightening. But on the ballot in November will be a direct ballot initiative to enshrine abortion rights into the Constitution. So that could end up overturning that horrible ban. And I think that could end up really helping Democrats in the state of Florida. If that direct ballot initiative is on the ballot, a lot of people are going to turn out to vote who wouldn't normally. And I think a lot of those people would end up voting down ballot for Democrats. And that could be a really good thing. Now, you heard there from Jessica, she brought up Nikki Haley voters. And we've talked a good bit about these clips and about polling revealing that a lot of Nikki Haley supporting or former Nikki Haley supporting Republicans are just fed up with Trump enough to say they're not going to vote for him in the general. And if that means they even just vote a third party, write someone in, sit out, that would make the difference. If a big chunk of Republican voters just can't get themselves to vote for Donald Trump, and especially if they go and vote for Joe Biden, as anecdotally we've seen a good bit of people say, again, that could make the difference. And I think one of the big issues that we've highlighted in the past is on the issue of democracy. People saying, hey, I disagree with Biden and policies, but I mean, I kind of want our democracy to continue forward and our Constitution to continue being protected by the president, and Trump just won't do that, and he threatens democracy. So we can battle it out. The me's of the world can battle it out with the Nikki Haley Republicans over policy of the world in the future if we keep democracy alive in the present. And that's what many of them understand, which is good to see. But also, I do think, as Jessica brought up, that those same Republicans are more moderate on the issue of abortion rights and are also being turned off by and turned away from Donald Trump, seeing the aftermath of his impact on reproductive freedoms across the country, because he got the justices onto the court and they overturned Roe v. Wade, and he takes credit for that. We've now seen state governments doing the horrific things that we're now seeing the Florida state government able to implement. And so could that be another motivator for these more moderate Republicans to turn away from Trump? It absolutely could be, and that will be interesting to see and a hopeful part of this as well. Optimism, see? Now, of course, we've reflected on many times the results that we've seen in different elections because of reproductive freedoms being at the center of the conversation in those elections in 2022 and 2023 across the special elections. We saw Democrats who weren't expected to winning in large part because they were running on reproductive freedoms, or Democrats who were expected to win, but they way outperformed the polls. Then, of course, we've talked a bunch of times about the direct ballot initiatives in Ohio, Kansas, Kentucky, these red states, still people coming out in favor of abortion rights. And then just recently in the state of Alabama, Maryland lands getting elected to the state legislature, deep red state, winning overwhelmingly on a campaign that focused heavily on reproductive rights. And so it's absolutely true that, at least public opinion wise, Biden is dealing with a lot of issues. I think in large part that has to do with the inaccurate or lack of coverage of his achievements and policy record, as we go through a lot in the show, but still a problem nevertheless, PR wise and public approval wise. And so that is to be concerned about reasonably so. But there's also this other huge unprecedented variable, actually a few of them, but what we're talking about here with abortion rights that keeps showing us that it heavily helps Democrats, and people come out in numbers that we don't expect time and time again on this particular issue. And then Trump, you'll notice when he gets asked about this, very nervous and doesn't really want to give a direct answer. And so he takes credit because he wants to make the Republicans in his party happy who are conservative on this issue. But then he also sort of tries to wiggle out of directly saying what his stance will be in a potential second term, and says different things, different times. And it's because he's petrified of this becoming the focus of the election, because he knows if it does become the focus of the election, again, I say that's his nightmare scenario. That's where he loses for sure, overwhelmingly. And so we have to do a good job of bringing it into focus. And I'll say again, as I've said before, that I definitely think number one, most important issue going into this election, we need to make sure people understand the ways in which Donald Trump threatens democracy, because every single other issue is attached to that. We can't battle it out over policies if we don't have a foundation of a democratic process to do so with. But that can't mean we forget to discuss these other hugely important subjects, namely abortion rights. And so that's what we're doing here, and spread it far and wide. We got to make sure that people understand what's at stake in this election across multiple issues. Please make sure, as I said previously, that you're subscribed to the channel. Click the like button. Let me know what you think in the comments. I scroll through the comments now and again, and it's mostly very thoughtful, sweet people, a little crazies every once in a while. That's more so Twitter DMs, to be honest. Those get crazy, or Twitter mentions. But let me know regardless. You hate me, you love me, let me know, and I'll hear from you there.